The first time he saw her, Ethan couldn't help but laugh. She was standing at the gate of Fort Ainsworth, slim, barely 5.5 feet tall, her uniform perfectly pressed, her brown hair tied neatly beneath her cap. To him, she didn't look like a soldier, let alone someone guarding a classified military base. "You sure you're not lost, sweetheart?" he had smirked, leaning out the window of his truck. "This is the front gate, not the Girl Scouts." Her expression didn't change, calm, unreadable. Only her eyes, cool and steady, met his with a quiet authority. "Step out of the vehicle, sir," she said evenly. Ethan rolled his eyes but obeyed, tossing his ID toward her. He was a private contractor delivering supplies to the base, a former Marine himself, though his discharge papers read, "Honorable," more out of pity than pride. He still carried that chip on his shoulder, the one that made him believe he could size anyone up in a second, especially a female guard. But what happened next burned in his memory forever. She didn't flinch under his sarcasm. She went through the protocol flawlessly, verifying, scanning, asking a series of quick, precise questions. Then, when she handed his ID back, she gave him a small, professional nod. "Drive safely, Mr. Grant," she said, already waving the next vehicle forward. Something about her tone stuck with him. Calm, not arrogant, not defensive, just in control. But Ethan pushed the thought aside. A week later, he saw her again. And again, he couldn't help himself. "Still playing soldier, huh?" he joked. "You ever actually see combat, or just stand there looking tough?" That time, she didn't answer. She just gave him the same steady stare, the kind that made him uncomfortable without knowing why. Days passed, weeks. Ethan kept making deliveries. Every time he saw her, she was there, rain or shine, dawn or dusk, disciplined, silent, unwavering. Some part of him started to respect it, though he'd never admit it out loud. Then came the day that changed everything. It was early morning, gray skies threatening rain. Ethan was waiting in line to enter the base when suddenly, a convoy of black SUVs roared up behind him. The kind of vehicles that only meant one thing: special operations. Within seconds, the female guard snapped to attention. She gave a sharp salute as a group of men in tactical gear exited the SUVs, broad shoulders, elite composure, the unmistakable presence of Navy SEALs. Ethan stepped aside, curious, watching the exchange. Then, to his shock, the lead SEAL, a man who looked like he could bend steel with his hands, saluted her. "Major Carter," he said respectfully. "Good to see you again, ma'am." Ethan froze. "Major." He blinked, thinking he'd misheard. But then the others followed suit, each offering her the same salute. One of them even said, "We wouldn't be here without you, ma'am." Major Carter. The female guard he'd mocked was a decorated officer, a special operations strategist, apparently on temporary security rotation while waiting for reassignment. Ethan felt his chest tighten with shame. Later that day, he couldn't stop thinking about it. Every smug word he'd thrown her way came back like a punch. He'd been so sure of himself, his experience, his assumptions, his pride. But all along, the real warrior had been standing right in front of him, carrying herself with a grace and discipline he could only wish he had. When he returned to the base the next week, she was there again, this time reviewing security logs near the gate. He stepped out of the truck before she could wave him forward. "Major Carter," he said quietly. She looked up, slightly surprised. "I owe you an apology," he continued. "I was out of line. I don't know what. Guess I was trying to make myself feel bigger." For a moment, she just studied him. Then, to his surprise, she smiled, a small, kind smile. "You're not the first," she said simply. "And you won't be the last. But the measure of a man isn't whether he makes mistakes. It's whether he owns them." Her words hit deeper than he expected. Ethan nodded, his throat tight. "I think I needed to hear that." She extended a hand, not out of pity, but respect. "We all have our battles, Mr. Grant. Some of them just don't wear uniforms." He shook her hand, humbled in a way he hadn't been for years. That night, sitting alone in his truck, Ethan thought about everything he'd seen. The salute, the respect, the quiet authority that didn't need shouting or muscle to prove itself. He thought about the countless people, men and women, who were underestimated every day, dismissed for what they looked like rather than who they were. And for the first time in a long time, he realized that real strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it stands silently at the gate, steady, humble, and unshaken by the opinions of others. From that day on, Ethan stopped mocking, stopped judging. Instead, he started listening. He started learning, and every time he drove past that gate, he made sure to salute her first. Because respect, he finally understood, wasn't about rank or gender. It was about character. And Major Carter, the woman he once laughed at, had more of it than anyone he'd ever met. Moral of the story: never underestimate someone based on appearances. True strength often hides behind humility, and the quietest people are sometimes the ones who've fought the hardest battles.